Tap, blah, 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 welcome to Magic the Chat.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Magic the Chat. I'm your host Cal, and today I've got another deck tech for you all while I'm away at MagicCon Amsterdam this past weekend. We've got Sefris of the Hidden Ways Turbo Dungeons. Now this deck is aiming to go through dungeons as quickly as possible. So let's talk through what Sefris does. Sefris is a white, a blue and a black for a 2/3 human wizard. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So in essence, this deck is a dungeon crawling reanimator deck. We are looking to reanimate creatures, discard creatures, trigger that ability. The deck's very versatile, it's very toolboxy, it's very reactive. It's a lot of fun to play if you enjoy a control deck. It has a lot of answers. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start with our lands here. Now, in terms of lands, we have 19 non-basic lands. Of course, Sefris is a pre-con originally. This has been heavily upgraded. We've got Exotic Orchard, Arcane Sanctum, Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Esper Panorama, Command Tower, Deserted Beach, Azorius Chancery, Irrigated Farmland, Port Town, Prairie Stream, Walls of Basilica, Godless Shrine, Darkwater Catacombs, Demir Aqueduct, Sunken Hollow, Choked Estuary, High Market, and Dungeon Descent as our 19 non-basic lands. Basic lands, we play 6 plains, 5 islands, and 7 swamps. Onto the actual cards in the deck that aren't lands, starting with our instants. We've got Frantic Search. Now, Frantic Search is an all-star in this deck. It's an instant that allows us to discard cards and untap up to 3 lands. Draw 2, discard 2, untap 3 lands for 3 mana, instant speed. Lets us ditch things in our opponent's turn, triggering Sefris. Sefris does only trigger once each turn, so we can't do it multiple times on our own, but doing it like this is how we get around it. And 2, another way of getting things into our graveyard at instant speed. Revivify is one that came in this deck. It is very useful sometimes. That's why it's managed to keep its slot after all this time. For 3 mana, you roll a d20 and add the number of creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. If you roll a 1 to 14, you return all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from your battlefield this turn to your hand. On a plus 15, return those cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can be a blowout, especially if someone board wipes. And at a very minimum, you're always going to get everything back to your hand, so it's a lot of card advantage. Village Rites is another good way of getting things in our graveyard on our opponent's turns. Utter End, it's Utter End, it gets rid of something. Swords of Plowshares, again, more removal. Despark. March of the Swirling Mists is a good way of protecting our things. And Flare of Denial is a new card from Modern Horizons 3 that I haven't had the chance to play with yet, but feels like it'll be right in home in this deck. Get them to sacrifice a creature to counter a spell, trigger Sefris, etc, etc. Onto our sorceries. We only have 4, but they are all very good. Starting with Unmarked Grave. This lets us basically entomb something else that is non-legendary. Burial Rites is a way to reanimate something with flashback. Victimize, another way to reanimate something. And Necromantic Selection is our board wipe. We do have another board wipe, but it's a creature-based board wipe. We do have another board wipe, but it's a creature-based board wipe that you'll see later. Up next, our artifact suite. We have, of course, our mana-producing artifacts in Arcane Signet, Mindstone, Chromatic Lantern, Wayfarer's Bauble, Command Tower, and Soul Ring. Utility is Lightning Greaves, Strionic Resonator lets us double up on Sefris' ability. Immovable Rod, another one that came in the original precon that has just managed to keep its space because it's been so useful in so many games. 3 mana, 4 mana, you can tap it and just turn the abilities of something off and it can't attack or block. It's very useful. And Sword of the Animist for another little bit of ramp. Onto our 2 enchantments. We have Dungeon Delver, because of course at the core of this deck it's a Dungeon Delving deck. Commander creatures you own have room abilities of dungeons you control, of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. This is just pure value in this deck. And Thorough Investigation, whenever you attack, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, venture into the dungeon. Again, another way we can go into the dungeon. We play 1 Planeswalker in Dakon Shadowslayer. Dakon pulls double duty for us here, or triple duty kind of. He surveils, which lets us put things in our yard. He exiles things, or we can pay, or we can -6 them to put an artifact card from our graveyard onto the battlefield. Now onto the biggest core of things here, and that is our creature suite. So starting off, we have Ledger Shredder, which is another card that is going to let us ditch things in our opponent's turns. Baleful Strix is a good option for sacrifice, because once it's entered the battlefield it's replaced itself. It's a good blocker. Merfolk Looter lets us draw cards to discard cards, which again, another way of being able to trigger Sefris in our opponent's turns. Champion of Wits is a card that often will be brought back with a trigger from Sefris. This is another way of getting things into our graveyard. Cloudblazer, good reanimation target if we don't have much else going on. Draws us some cards. Null Drifter is a new card from Modern Horizons 3. It essentially does the same thing as Mull Drifter would do if we were playing it. I thought we played Mull Drifter, but apparently we don't. Oh no, we don't. There it is. So Mull Drifter enters the battlefield, draws 2 cards, evoke. Null Drifter, when you cast it, you draw 2 cards and evoke for 3. This one is a better option for us, I think, as a finisher, because of course the Annihilator 1 on Null Drifter does matter. Laser for the Archangel. This has been a card that again has overperformed when I've played it. You see this card on the battlefield and it doesn't feel like it's doing a lot until it is doing a lot. And when things you control are dying and return to your hand, and things your opponents control are getting exiled, you're living a good life. Thieving Amalgam is pure, that is a reanimation target. This card can take over games, I promise you that. Ancient Gold Dragon is another reanimation target. Really good card, very pretty in this foil treatment. Sun Titan lets us buy things back from our graveyard. Diluvian Primordial lets us cast instants from our opponent's graveyards. Very useful card. You can get a really good rate if you bounce it. If you get this back with Sefris and you get to cast 2-3 instants and sorceries from players' graveyards, you can take out a lot of things, because often there's a Path to Exile or something in someone's graveyard, a Chaos War, and you'll be able to deal with a couple of problem payments just by playing this one Diluvian Primordial. Radiant Solar is honestly an all-star in this deck. Whenever it or another non-token creature we control enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon, and we can discard it for 1 mana. So it does everything we want from Sefris. Worm Coil Engine, again, this is another one that we can sacrifice for value and brings back as a reanimation target. Phantasmal Image enters the battlefield as the copy of the best creature on the battlefield at all times, basically. It's just a very useful card, came in the original pre-con, and I haven't felt the need to take it out. White Plume Adventurer lets us take the initiative and untap our creatures, but essentially gives us vigilance in this deck because we've usually completed the dungeon by the time we cast it. Burnished Heart has a bit of ramp. Hammer Pashar does the same thing as Dungeon Delver, triggers room abilities twice, which is very useful. Solemn Simulacrum, this is another card that just is pure value in here. Triumphant Adventurer, it's a 1/1 Death Toucher, which is very useful in Commander. Has first straight when it's attacking, and when it attacks you venture into a dungeon. At our core, we are a Dungeon Delving deck, so that's why he's in here. Stealthy Voidwalker is a good way of dealing with anyone playing with their graveyard, essentially, that isn't us. And we like to be the only ones that can access our graveyard. Midnight Pathlighter. This is a very good card for when you're late in a game and you do have attacks to make. Spark Double. It is always useful to have 2 copies of Sefris on the battlefield. I promise you that. Spark Double is an excellent card in this deck. Luminous Broodmoth lets us sacrifice things pretty freely. And it pulls a lot of work in this deck. And yeah, it lets you trigger death triggers twice, essentially. Because when something dies that doesn't have flying, you get it back as a flying creature. Karmic Guide gives us a bit of more reanimation. Yawgmoth is one of our sack outlets. Viscera Seer, another. Shriekmaw, the Evoke, really important with Sefris. Ashen Rider is another one of our reanimation targets. When it enters or dies, we exile a permanent. Sunblast Angel is one of our board wipes. Honestly, a very useful board wipe. Came in the original pre-con and has done a lot of work for me in the past. Subtlety is something that I just threw in here that I opened at the time. Honestly, I think there's probably another creature that could go in here. There's probably another slot, but when I have played it, it has been very useful. I just don't often find the need to evoke it, and what I really want to do is evoke it. Meteor Golem is another reanimation target that gets rid of a permanent. Plague Crafter will help trigger Sefris and keep our opponent's boards clear. Run-On Unicorn, again, a little bit of removal that helps us trigger Sefris. Cataclysmic Gearhulk is another board wipe that is a little bit more selective, lets us keep a couple of things. And the newer Cursed Marauder is essentially a better second copy of Plague Crafter. And that is the deck. It is a lot of fun. The rate you can go through dungeons in this deck is kind of insane. If you did pick up the pre-con, I would suggest going back, taking a little look at it, going through all your ways to discard cards, because I think the original pre-con was a little bit slow. This one, when it gets to a critical mass of lands and resources, really can take over a game. It's a lot of fun to play if you enjoy a more control style of game. That's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed that, please leave a like, subscribe. If you want to see more of me, follow me on Instagram at @the_chattering, on X at @the_chattering. Thank you for watching and goodbye.